Hey, what's up, guys? You're listening to the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm Ashley, your host. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're having an awesome Wednesday. Today, you're going to listen in to me and Christina Tinker, and we're talking about mom dating, having a village, and how to create a village when you've moved to a new area, a new place, and just some ideas of how we can unawkwardly, or as best as we can, meet other moms in our area and create friendships. So let's get to the episode. I think it's a really good one. Hey, Christina, I am super excited for you to be on the It Takes a Village podcast. I'm really glad that we're getting to connect and I get to hear and share your story with everybody else. And I'm so glad that we are talking about village because, I mean, obviously the podcast is It Takes a Village. So I think that we both feel very passionately about this. And so and with your story, I really am excited to see your perspective on the topic. And so before we get started and before I keep rambling, I would love for you to say a little bit about yourself for others that are listening who don't know who you are or haven't heard of you. Just a little bit about life and what life looks like for you right now.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ashley. I'm really excited to be on here and visiting with you as well. I'm Christina Tinker. I am a Texan by birth and have lived in Richmond, Virginia for the past 2 years. And I have 3 kids via 2 pregnancies. So I've got an almost 10-year-old and a pair of almost 5-year-olds. So life looks about as wild as you might imagine it to look with those dynamics. I have a husband who travels quite a lot, and I transitioned out of a corporate career about 4 years ago now, and have been doing my own thing with some consulting. And then most recently, I married my corporate background with my entrepreneurial spirit and my creative side to found a local parenting community here called Richmond Moms Blog. And then I travel around speaking and spreading truth and hope on topics like vulnerability and courage cultivation and connection. And so, yeah, village is something I am deeply passionate about.
Yeah. And you had written that when you became a mother, like a lot of us, we dream of it being this like automatic initiation into this huge tribe of sisterhood. And that's really, sometimes it can be not the case.
Oh,
and so
yes.
how do you feel about, how did you feel about that letdown that, okay, like once I get this, I'm going to be automatically into this club and this sisterhood and it's going to be great and I'm going to have all this support. And so, yeah, how did you feel like when you actually got there and it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the greatest myths of motherhood, that it's going to be this great invitation into the tribe. And it's really, for most of us, it's a massive, isolating time in our life. I think I have some perspective now because it was 10 years ago that I began my journey into the tribe. And so I think with that perspective, what I would say is that it's kind of like a lot of things in our life that we assign such meaning to when we get there. When I get this degree, when I get this job, when I get this house, I'll feel this. So now with that perspective, I can really see it for what it is, and that, every part of our life should be about the journey and not necessarily about the goal. But for me, certainly in that moment, it just was like such a shock to feel lonely and isolated when I was expecting to feel like I had made it, and like I had finally gotten to the finish line or to the starting line of a new experience. And so it was a hard time to feel like I didn't belong. I actually feel like I sort of struggled with some imposter syndrome because I thought like something magical was going to happen and I was going to become this really patient, kind, caring, person overnight.
With a newborn? What? No.
Right. And all the same feelings of frustration and impatience and inadequacy were still there. But now I had this little, angel to take care of. And it was a hard time. It was a hard time.
So how did you get out of your house and go find people? For all of us, I think about when I was a mom, it's like you're sitting at home and you like so desire, but you still stay in your home.
Oh yeah. So, and for me too, I actually ended up struggling with some postpartum anxiety and depression issues. And so, just recognizing that and realizing that that was part of what was going on, I think helped me to say, okay, this is part of what I'm experiencing. And as people started texting and calling and saying, can I come by? Will you come out? I sort of forced myself, quite frankly, to say yes, even when I wanted to just stay in.
Yeah.
And then once I got through, that initial, I would say that really was a good 6 to 9 months of just, working through those things. The things that I did, and this is my personality, I just found people to either serve with. So I was part of like a community service organization. So I would go and volunteer, and lots of other moms were there at that time. I found people that were interested in things that I was interested in. I remember I took some cooking classes, which isn't necessarily a thing I would normally do. And mostly I just, like I said, I started saying yes, even when I wanted to say no, because it got me out of the house, or it got me to, let people come over. And then slowly, that tribe sort of started to form itself. Yeah. So those are some of the first things that I did.
Looking back now, I think of myself as a mom with my firstborn compared to like my second, and it was totally different because I was petrified. So like looking back to when you had your first child, or if you think about speaking to women with like newborns, and you look back at your own story, what would you say like that you've learned to do differently as for yourself, or reaching out in those terms?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I have learned is that I don't have to get myself all ready and perfect. And like that means my hair and makeup all the way to my kids. I mean, the way I leave the house now sometimes with my daughter's hair is absolutely shocking considering what I would have done the first time around.
Yeah.
And like the same thing of your house and, whatever. I mean, I think just showing up in like the real moment of where you are and being okay with that is probably the biggest thing that I would have said to myself back then. And also that if you don't want to go out and do a big thing, then, just going to someone's house or just inviting them over. I mean, just to be so much lighter about it would be one thing. And then also, I think I really held myself to totally unrealistic expectations about what I call the flakiness factor. So I think like, and another mom friend and I were laughing about this the other day. I think like, especially high-strung type A type, people, we don't want to let other people down. And so there's this idea of like, well, if you call and say, oh my gosh, something happened this morning and things have changed. Other people have done that to me from the minute I, had kids and had mom friends. And I realize now, like, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But I never gave myself that grace to say, you know what? The kids woke up and they were totally off and, they didn't want to get out of their pajamas and we're just not going to make it to the museum. I would move, earth, wind, and fire to make it happen. Oh, I'm so sorry. And side note, I got a puppy the same year that I sent all 3 children to school.
So you like freed yourself up in one way only to torture yourself in another. No.
Girl, I can't even tell you. Girl, pretty sure another set of twins might have been easier than a puppy. But anyway, but that's one thing I think would be that I really Yeah, the flakiness factor. I think I was always so afraid of becoming the flake that I never just let myself say, "Hey, I know we said we were going to go to the museum today, but it's just not in the cards." And that is definitely something I would do differently, because there are times that I forced it just so I wouldn't let somebody down.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, oh my gosh, they would have totally understood.
Yeah.
We all go through this.
Yeah.
So,
And it's always those times too when you force it, that when you finally get there and do it, you're like, your kids are a mess and you're like
right.
just pulling on them and you're like, this was so, and it makes you like more stressed out. It makes the whole thing
Oh,
worse. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. And then you feel terrible. Yeah, it's not a good, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. You've had a lot of pivots in your life from moving, like you said, to a big career, and now you've gotten to merge those together. But you had those big career changes, and then also moving. Like you were from Texas, and then you went to a new place. And you're very open about like the struggles that you faced both personally and in motherhood. How did you give yourself the permission and find the bravery to open up to other women?
Yeah, it's funny. I was a guest on a show last night and we were talking about this. And I said to her afterward, said, it's interesting because I actually fought it for a pretty good while.
Yeah.
I fought sharing some of my struggle because I just thought, I don't want people to see that part. And
Mm-hmm.
I've worked so hard to get to a different place. And then it just, different circumstances kept showing up in my life where it was this invitation to say, hey, would you share a part of your story with us? And what I started realizing was that it wasn't just about sharing it so that people who were experiencing similar struggles could feel less alone and could see hope that, they could come through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm speaking now, about my eating disorder recovery or about the challenges I've had with mental health and anxiety. What I really experienced for the first time back in 2015, when I did this on a very public platform and was asked to participate in the Listen to Your Mother show back in San Antonio, Texas, was the freedom that it brought me. Because I didn't really,
Yeah.
I never felt like I was hiding or I was, still experiencing shame for my past, because I had come to a place of really owning my story and understanding that it was just part of my story. It wasn't, the whole of who I am. But because I wasn't being open and necessarily vulnerable about all of those parts, there was a part of me that was still hiding. And I think any time that we're hiding something, there's going to be some residual shame, some residual guilt, and that kind of thing. And so I think it was just honestly sort of like by experience, by doing it, and then seeing, oh, wow, that actually felt really freeing and that really felt right. And it really felt good, that I started to give myself permission more. And then as I started getting people's responses and that person walking up to me afterwards with tears in their eye and saying, thank you so much for sharing this because I've been through it too.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I knew that something really transformational was happening, that, by freeing myself, I was inviting other people to be free. And I think as women, we just, we hold ourselves to such high standards,
Mm-hmm.
and we oftentimes are hiding so much because we just don't want to let people down. We don't want to let ourselves down, and experiencing that freedom just leads to so much more authenticity and connection and just beauty in my life and I think in the world.
Yeah. And speaking of into that hiding, a lot of women, myself included, of course, you get like fearful of oversharing or fearful of how people are going to react to like what you say or what you're telling, because you're right. It totally does give like a whole nother level of healing when you are able to, speak to other women about what you're going through. What would you say to women who are afraid of not being accepted well, when they share, or being afraid of oversharing? What would you say to those women who are like, I really need to talk to somebody. I really want to share this with my friend, but I'm afraid of, the way she's going to respond?
Yeah. No, I think it's such an important thing to consider. And especially in our social media world today, I think that we oftentimes put ourselves at risk for oversharing or being hurt. And so, I think it's a very careful balance of courage and vulnerability with trust and boundaries. And you really can't have one without the other. And so I think that as women begin to own their own story and come into that place of knowing who they are and then wanting to be able to share that in a more authentic way, we still have to understand that people earn the right to know our whole story, and that, we're not necessarily hiding by not putting everything out there to the general public, that we still live in community and we still live in villages, and that as we develop real authentic connection with people, they earn more and more access to that part of us. And that's something that really, frankly, it has to be cultivated. It takes great time and intention to do that, and to do that in a way that makes you feel safe and also still allows you to be courageous and to put yourself out there. So I think that those are the things for me that I've had to be very intentional about. Is there's stuff that I've decided, look, this can be on the public platform because I would be okay reading it in a newspaper. And that's my definition, right? If I were to read a story about myself that somebody had put out on the New York Times, would I be okay with this detail being included? Then that's okay for public consumption. Right. The part that I would want to have revealed over coffee with someone that I know and trust, I keep tighter boundaries around that. And people earn the right to know that by being authentic and investing in real relationship and real connection with me. And I use Brene Brown is, TED speaker and a researcher out of my hometown of Houston, that I use a lot of her work. I'm so sorry. I thought I had it on Do Not Disturb. I don't even know how that happened.
Oh, no, I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I use her definition when she talks about connection, and she talks about connection is when people feel seen, heard, and valued, and when we can give and receive without judgment, and when we gain strength and sustenance from a relationship. And so I think that when we start thinking about putting more of our story out there, especially those deep, more personal parts of our story, we still have to understand that it's okay to have boundaries about what's revealed to which audiences and when. So,
that makes me think of, as you were saying that, the image that was coming to my mind was like a bullseye. So basically, like in the tiny center, you have the friends that you could tell almost anything to. And then as you get out, like the people in those other outer rings, like you're gonna tell less to, because you don't need to tell everybody everything, because you don't know where they're gonna share that information, or depending on their opinions or whatever, they're gonna give you different feedback. And so I think that analogy just made me think of just being more intentional about like who you're sharing with, and then maybe you don't have to have that fear of oversharing or being judged or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a wonderful visual, and I think too that when we talk about things like courage and authenticity, people think, okay, well, I have to be willing to put it all out there and not care what other people think.
Yeah.
Okay. That is the exact opposite of true authenticity and courage and vulnerability, because in reality, it's much more intentional, and it's, we don't have to put everything out there just to show courage.
So when you moved from Texas to Virginia, which is every mom's worst nightmare almost, like moving to a new place, especially when you have you have your friends in one place and you feel so safe and you have your tribe, and then you try to move, to a whole new place and start all over, which is like going on Mom Tinder, like you're like, please swipe right, you're like, please swipe right on me. I need somebody here. How did you build a tribe in a new place?
Yeah, it just was total candor. I actually, so we'll hit our 2-year mark, June the 5th, I think will be our 2-year mark. And I have been experiencing some homesickness recently, I mean, it's definitely hard. It's definitely hard to leave your tribe, leave your village. But I think what's so cool in the world that we live in today is that you're leaving them physically, but you still have there's so much more connection available to stay connected back home. But in terms of building a new village here and building a village in any new place that I've been, the first thing is, as I said earlier, is just going out and doing things that interest me. So I love art. I love hiking. I love cooking. I love food. I love wine and coffee. So, I went on many a loner coffee outing just to like scout out where the other moms were hanging out
Yeah.
in and around. I mean, I think when you have school age kids, it makes it a little easier because as soon as the kids are in school, there is automatically, some level of community available there that you can start to build relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been good. But founding the Richmond Moms blog, the parenting community that I have founded here, I mean, that for me, that was definitely a huge like fast forward button to starting to build a village and community, because people started coming virtually into our Facebook groups and on our online website. But then we also have in-person events where I could, bring people together and actually meet them face to face and start to build some relationships there. But even that in and of itself, it required a pretty big amount of vulnerability because I'm not from here. The little town that I'm in is particularly community focused, and Richmond is a very hyper local town, and there are a good number of people that have been born and raised here. And so, there was also the acknowledgement that I am not a local, and, just being really transparent about that and saying, hey, I'm not a local, but I love this place where we've landed and I want to be engaged and involved. And, Ashley, for me, I think everywhere I've been, because even within Texas, we've moved around a little bit. Everywhere I go, one of the ways that I think I have really been able to build community and been able to quickly establish meaningful relationships is by serving in that community. And that's just been, I was raised by a community servant. My mom's still almost 70 years old, is just a very active community servant. And I think that is an automatic way to really, build relationships that are more meaningful and not just surface level, because you find common causes and common values and missions. And so that's been a critical part of how I've also helped build a community and built a village around myself here.
Yeah, it's seriously so close to like dating. Like just when you would want to find a mate, you want somebody who's into sort of the same things that you're into. So you're probably going to meet him, at the places that you like to hang out, or whatever, or the sports events and
right.
Yeah.
And not forcing things, I think too, especially when you move to a new town, it's like, oh, you go to this dinner party or you go to this baseball game or whatever. And it's like, I just want a friend, and you try to force something. I mean, just like you said with dating, it's not going to work. If it's you're trying to make it work, I think letting it happen somewhat organically, but on the flip side, you do have to go on a lot of first dates, I mean, that's sometimes how it goes. So that's been a big thing. And then, like I said, man, for me, and this will be probably my life's work, is just letting people invite me to their home instead of feeling like I always have to be the hostess, or, allowing people to offer. When people started bringing us food, and like our neighbors who have 5 children invited us into their home within a week of living here. And we knew instantly that they were just like magical, wonderful people, and inviting our kids over to play so that I could unload boxes. And, there's a certain level of comfort in that. And then there's a certain level of like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Do I trust this? And sometimes just, you got to let your guard down a little bit and let people help you. And I think a lot of beautiful relationships and communities have been built on that alone, just letting people help you and letting people be your village when they want to be. So.
Yeah. I love that you emphasize letting people help you, because as moms, we try to like do it all. And it's like this badge of honor that we wear of like, I can do all this in one day. Like I am mom, hear me roar kind of thing. I wanted
exactly. Right. I know it. No, it's so true. I will pick up like 5 kids from all of their various things and carpool them and get them home. And it never would occur to me to let somebody else do that for me. Right. And now it does. But before my twins, I never would have, but I would be, no, I'm the one that can do it all. And now it's like, you know what? You're willing to help me? I will take some help. So, and it really makes people feel so valued and so needed, and so much more important in your life. And so I think that's something to remember for all of us that would like to have more meaningful relationships. Man, let somebody help you. That's a great way to forge a deeper relationship.
I wanted to ask you, since we're using this idea of like mom dating, when you want to meet a new mom, what's your go-to pickup line? Like, how do you start a conversation with a mom that you've never talked to before? Because I know some moms out there like, yeah, that sounds great and all, but how do I like talk to her? Like, what do I say?
Right. Okay. So in person or online? Because I think it's a little bit different.
Oh, let's do both. Can you do both?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So I think when someone reaches out to me, I say yes, but you're going to laugh at my answer. Okay. So whenever someone reaches out to me online, I almost always invite them for coffee, because I would rather have a face-to-face conversation, because that's me. That's me. And we live, like I said, we're in a pretty close-knit community where everything is 20 minutes away. So it's pretty realistic that you could get but I'm from Houston, Texas. So I'll use that, in Houston, you can drive for 2 hours and 20 minutes and still be in Houston because of the traffic there. So it's not always as likely. But you know what I typically would say, like in an online setting, is a lot of times when you're getting those types of invitations or something, you're finding each other because you're in a Facebook group or something like that has a common thread already. Mm-hmm. So one of the places I've built some good relationships and started to have some members of what I would consider my tribe here in my new town has been through a group called Boss Babes. Boss Babes RVA. And so number one, it's all, female. And most people in there are like owners of a small business or working within a small team of people. And so a lot of times just talking about the type of work that we're doing, and I don't mean like, what do you do professionally? I just mean, hey, I see that you are, part of a new yoga collective. How'd you get into yoga? I just started yoga a couple years ago. So generally speaking, I think it's that finding like whatever that point of connection was, mm-hmm. and then asking the person questions. There's nothing anybody on the planet, male or female, likes more than talking about themselves. Little known secret. So, right. But just, I typically, that's how I have had, I think, some good, Facebook Messenger or email type things that have started. And then, like I said, more often than not, it turns into an invitation in some shape, form, or fashion to either meet up, one afternoon or to get coffee while the kids are at school or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then turning that into a more meaningful connection. And I think the same thing, in person. I've generally asked a person about, what they're passionate about, what they're doing. And I think for me, this has been something I've become very intentional about since leaving corporate America. And, Americans in general, we say, what do you do before we say, who are you and how are you doing? Right. That's just, we're so focused on our state of doing as opposed to being. So I've really been intentional because for a while I very frankly struggled because I had a pretty great career, and I think quite a lot of my self-identity was wrapped up in the career woman that I was. And so when I left that professional career and I would go to a function with my husband, and if someone said to me, what do you do? I mean, I would get so uncomfortable. Well, I used to do this, and this, but we had our third child and now I'm here, whatever. And I would immediately launch into it like I was making some excuse for what I do. Yeah. And so over that transition, I really just started answering the question, even though someone would still say, what do you do? I would answer it with who I am, I'm a community servant and I'm very involved in my children's school life and, their social life. And I'm an advocate for women living life to the fullest potential. And it was so funny to see how people would look at me like, that's not like, are you an accountant? Because I'm really uncomfortable with this answer. So I've started almost making an assumption that everybody I meet has, they have a job. There's something that they do, but I don't, that's not how I want to talk to them. Whether I know if they're a stay-at-home mom or a work-from-home mom or a work outside the house, I really try to start with, hey, I saw, on your profile that, you're into energetic healing. Tell me about that. I don't know anything about it. And just giving them a chance to talk about what they, something I've picked up on. That's been a great way for people to, I think, immediately feel a little bit seen and like, oh, you noticed something about me that wasn't just, my job or my hair color or whatever, and allows it to be a little bit deeper conversation right from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that's a good tool, is that for some reason, when we meet other women, we don't want them to know that we've already been creeping their Facebook profile. But but newsflash, we're doing it and they're doing it too. And they know that we're doing, so you might as well just use it to your advantage and be like, hey, I saw on your Facebook, Facebook page, like you said, that you're into yoga or whatever. Because it's no secret, you guys, now we all know that we all creep each other. That's just where we are right now in society, is that we're all looking through everybody's things. And especially if you're in a group together or whatever.
Right.
So it's no big secret. And I think that we could use it to our advantage.
Yeah. I mean, I think about listen, and sometimes it's not even that we're creeping their feet, right? It's things just show up on your feed because we're all on the apps. And so you put it out there, I consumed it. So,
that's so true.
It's like a job interview. I mean, remember when they used to tell you, don't show up and the first question shouldn't be, oh, tell me about your company. Show that you've done a little research. So I don't think there's anything wrong with showing hey, I want to make friends. And so I checked out who you are. Now, I don't think you should walk in and say, I know your children's names are, that's going a little too far. But yeah, showing that you took the time to kind of look and found a common interest, I think is a really great way to show hey, I'm interested in knowing you and seeing who you are as a person. So.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that most of, if not all of the City Moms blogs, if you guys are listening, you can find one of these blogs for almost any city. I know there's one for Fort Worth in my area. And most, like you said, you guys host events. Most of the other groups do that. So I think that this community of City Moms blogs throughout the United States is a really good way to connect with other moms. I know that even here, ours is broken down to even in if you're a mom with kids who have allergies and so you're wow, it just gets even more narrowed down, and you can find your common thread with each of these people or each of these groups, and then kind of go deeper if you want to, or meet up. And so I think these City Moms blogs are just a really good resource for moms if you have them in your area.
Absolutely. I mean, I know currently I think there are 87 cities in the network. And like you said, I mean, most of us have community groups going and focus, areas, whether it's by age of kids or, certain dynamics that are going on. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. And it is something that makes us pretty unique, that we have the in-person community aspect, and it's not just an online community, because like you said, when you have little itty bitties, I mean, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's 6 p.m. and I never left my house today.
Yeah. You're I didn't speak one full sentence of English to anybody.
Yeah. Am I even wearing pants?
Yeah.
It's but I think, that phase, while it seems like it lasts forever, it really, it is over in a relatively short amount of time. And then we do find ourselves going, wait a minute, I need face-to-face communication. What's going on? So it's a great place to reach out and find a place that you can start to connect with moms in person.
So before I ask you these last few questions that I have for you, I wanted to let everybody know where they can find you if they want to follow you, especially if they're in Richmond. How can they connect with you, and all the places that we can find you on social?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ashley. So yes, Richmond Moms Blog, if you're here in the Richmond area, and our website is rvamomsblog.com. Our Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram handle is Richmond Moms Blog. So you can find us there. We have very active communities in all the social groups. So engage with us. Sign up for our newsletter is a great way to, find out about any of the live upcoming events. We just had a big one last weekend. And then if you are a woman who's interested in these topics of courage cultivation, of connection, authenticity, and vulnerability, you can also follow me at Christina Tinker Talks on Facebook and Instagram, as well as YouTube. And you can sign up for my newsletter there. I've written a children's book called Oscar the Only that's available on Amazon. And that's a story about a little boy who thinks he's the only one that feels alone in the world. And he finds out that that's, a universal experience of being human. And it's about how he develops compassion and relationship.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds really good. And everybody can creep you and ask you, come up with
I'm creepable. I'm creepable on all the on all the various outlets.
That's awesome. Okay, so my first question for you is, if you could choose one of the most influential books that you've read, or a podcast or something like that, what would it be?
Okay, so I've already mentioned Dr. Brene Brown.
Yeah.
I have really just devoured all of her work over the last 10 years. I think my favorite book of hers is probably actually her most recent one, which is called Braving the Wilderness. Mm-hmm. But I suggest that people start with her first one, which is The Gifts of Imperfection. So The Gifts of Imperfection by Dr. Brene Brown, and then read all accordingly. And because I know this is a podcast, mostly of parents and that sort of thing. Also, she does have an audio book called The Gift of Imperfect Parenting that is really incredible for parents. And it's quick. It's a couple of hours that you can listen to it.
What is your favorite form of self-care, or something that you do that really fills you up?
Yeah. So self-care is a topic I'm really focused on right now. I'm giving a lot of talks here in the Richmond community on this. And so for me, self-care is not what I think the media tells us self-care is. It's not pampering. It's not, a manicure, pedicure is a wonderful pampering gift, but it's not self-care. So for me, my favorite form of self-care is meditation and prayer. Sitting down and giving myself the time and the space and the energy to really spend 10 minutes centering myself, grounding myself, and communicating. I call it God, other people call it the universe, whatever that sense of higher, a higher self or the greater being is. That has been transformational in my life. And I know on the days that I don't give myself the time to do that, I'm going to communicate differently with my kids. I'm going to communicate differently with my husband, and things are not going to go as smoothly as they could have if I just take that time and really focus on having some peace and having some quiet time.
Yeah. What's really funny is that when you're talking about self-care and what people typically think that it is just by, association, I remember when I used to think that, okay, I'd ask my husband for a day, afternoon away from the kids or whatever, and I would do the nails thing, I would go these places because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. This is self-care. And if I couldn't afford a massage, the next best thing was, I'll go get my nails done or something.
Right.
And then I could remember being in the chair for an hour or two thinking that I have so many other things that I would much rather be doing. And then you come home because you lost those hours. And then you don't feel full. You don't feel so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's right. It's wait a minute, that wasn't, and I love the language you used, right? Fill your cup. If it doesn't, when you're filling your cup or not. And sometimes calling a friend and just talking can be a form of self-care for me, especially now that I live so far away from home and my home and family. I talked to an old friend from, I've actually known her since we were in elementary school, but we went all the way through college together. I talked to her this morning, and man, that filled my cup. Just getting to have that connection point was really meaningful. So
yeah. I think trying to really ask yourself what it is that you need, because sometimes for me it's I just going on a walk, walking my dog, which seems like it wouldn't be a form of self-care, but if I walk, but I have that whole slow walk around the block by myself without the kids, or even when I go up and down the aisles in Target when I don't have my kids, I'm not even there to buy anything, but I can just wander aimlessly, which probably looks really suspicious in Target. I don't know, maybe they're used to moms just wandering.
I was gonna say, I think we fit the profile of The people they know what
Yeah,
we're doing.
they know what we're doing by now. They're like, oh, yeah. If you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. I think for me right now, the central theme that keeps showing up and keeps being presented in different ways is that women need to have a way to find and to hear their own voice again, and to hear it loudly and boldly and with beautiful clarity, and to really fall in love with the sound of their own voice again, because we've gotten so confused and so mixed up by all of the messages out there that many of us don't even know what the sound of our own voice is anymore. And so that's how I would empower women, is to really get in touch with and fall in love with the sound of their own voice again.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure before you exit out of your podcast app right now, if you're on the screen that's showing all the available episodes, scroll all the way down to the bottom right now and hit the stars at the bottom under ratings and reviews, and it will help me out tremendously. And if you want to leave a review, that would be awesome, but at least hit the stars for me. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Catch you next time.